I'm trying to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound right-winger because I don't mean it in the right-wing way.
Say it in the
But I'm
right
going to
wing
say
way.
it and then it's just going to be, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the House of Kajur. We have a special guest today, Kaylynn Mayo. Woo!
Woo!
So we're going to be talking about a lot of financial stuff today, but before we dive into that, I want to turn it over to Kaylynn to introduce yourself.
I'm Kaylynn.
That's it. Thanks
That's
for
it.
watching this
Yep.
video. We're done.
The end.
The end. But yeah, do you wanna tell us about who you are, what kind of work you do, where you're coming from, stuff like that?
Sure. I'm originally from Virginia. I lived in New York for a while, but now I'm in Massachusetts because I just finished my master's degree of education from Harvard, and I'm in this fun unemployment phase of my life
Mm-hmm.
after graduation. So I'm just hanging out, talking to friends, visiting friends, working on some art and other things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. I'll introduce myself as well because I haven't really done that on the channel officially. But I'm Felix. I am an artist, writer, and educator, and now a YouTuber. I am also currently unemployed, but we just bought this house, as folks on the channel will know, and I'm focused on building up this channel and the house itself. Yeah. But so one of the main things I wanted to talk to you about is really finances and specifically how we both relate to this aspiration of quote unquote the American dream and the American nightmare. But yeah, our relationships with money and these dreams, these aspirations that are sold to us, but also that we have our own relationships with. But maybe we can start with just talking about what your relationship with money has been like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess when I think about my relationship with money, it really starts in my like very early 20s, like right after graduating college. I was teaching in a charter school in New York, and then I was laid off after a couple of months.
Mm.
And teaching was really challenging for many reasons, and just like really draining. I was working like 12 hours a week, not 12 hours a week, 12 hours a day. If only I was working 12 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I was working like 12 hours a day, commuting far. And so I just felt like in that period of unemployment, I didn't have a lot of savings. So I was really pressed to find a job. But at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, I was like, I kind of hate working. And so I, like, in talking to one of my friends who had thought a lot about personal finance, I started reading about saving and investing, about FIRE, financial independence, retire early.
Hmm.
And that's when I really started thinking a lot more about personal finance and like how to use money, not just like, oh, I'm saving 10% of my paycheck and
Mm-hmm.
not really thinking about what I'm doing with it. And since then, I've like set up a retirement account, have done some amount of like research into the stock market and
Mm-hmm.
401ks and IRAs and all of that, but also really like to talk about like income and saving and investing and home ownership with my friends.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about fire before.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's new to me. Where did you learn that? Tell us more.
Yeah, I there was this blog that I started reading that one of my friends, UA, recommended, called The Money Habit, and it was this woman who retired at 28.
Hmm.
She worked in finance, which was not where I was working,
Yeah.
so different salaries, but still the fact that she was able to
Yeah.
retire at 28 with like, oh, just over $2 million in
Whoa.
her like investment accounts.
Yeah.
It was something that I used as somewhat of a model in thinking about like how to be more frugal in some areas where
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense to like not stress about being super frugal.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I think there's a lot of ways this conversation can go. There's a lot of I think it's very easy to, in some ways, like be middle class in this country and just spend all your money on stuff. It's so easy to just
Mm-hmm.
spend your money on stuff here. At the same time, like a lot of people are not middle class, and even at
Yeah.
that time, I depends who you ask. If I was middle class at that time,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, there's like lean fire, there's fat fire,
Oh my
there's
God.
lean fire is like you're continuing in retirement to be like super frugal.
Mm-hmm.
Fat fire is like I know that when I retire, like I don't want to be stressed about scrimping and saving and being frugal. So
Mm-hmm.
I want whatever amount I need in retirement to like travel and spend lavishly.
Mm-hmm.
There's what is it called? Coast fire. So coast fire is like the amount of money um, you should have saved. Where if you don't, you'll still be working and making money, but you don't need to contribute any more to your accounts, and it'll
Mm-hmm.
just grow like through the stock market into being what you need to retire on.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's the fire landscape in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's funny because I keep thinking about how the world is on fire, and we're
Yeah.
thinking about how to fire through this fire,
Yeah.
um, and also like being fired,
Yeah.
just all the ways
I was
that
fired and I
fire.
thought about fire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
firing helped me think about fire. That's funny. Yeah, but I'm curious also about if you've had to unlearn or relearn things about your relationship with money since growing up. I mean, I'm thinking about my own relationship with money and
Yeah.
how it was always kind of this thing that always was supposed to be elusive for me because I went to
Mm.
art school, like I was a photographer. I was always supposed to be the poor starving artist,
Mm-hmm.
and I went into that world assuming that and believing
Yeah.
that, and now here I am, like having bought a home,
Yeah.
and not on a ridiculous salary. Like I've been making less than 42K for the last 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I have Renee as well, my spouse, and we're doing this together. But she's also on a similar salary, and
Mm-hmm.
so we're doing this together on really not that much money,
Mm-hmm.
but still having made that much money, feeling like it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. That's something that I've had to like relearn is the conditioning that I was raised with and the actual realities of what's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had like similar experiences, dissimilar experiences?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, like growing up as an artist, I think based on my parents' experiences, like my grandmother on my father's side is an artist, and just I think like growing up with that, my parents are very clear, like they want to encourage my artistic exploration, but at the same
Mm,
time, they're like, don't be a starving artist, like don't you can't they never said you can't go to art school, but they were like
mhm.
you need to really really want to go to art school. Like
Yeah.
they encouraged me to like think about a stable career, but at the
Hmm.
same time I still sort of entered nonprofit and education land. Like if
Hmm.
I'm with a college degree, I'm sort of entering, like intentionally entering the lowest paid option.
Hmm.
And so I think sort of similarly, I had this idea that I'm not going to make money.
Hmm.
um, and I think in the past couple years, I mean, I just took on a bunch of student loans for an education master's degree. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm in some ways, I'm not making the best financial choices.
Mm.
I'm not choosing to work in tech or whatever. But
Hmm.
the other side of it is I'm thinking about, well, what are the ways I can still do work that feels important to me and important to, I
Yeah.
don't know, the world or my community,
Yeah.
but also not going into it like, oh, please, sir, can I have 40K, sir? Like
Hmm.
um, there's still ways to like expect a decent salary.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, something you brought up reminded me that I should acknowledge that, was able to come out of undergrad and grad school without any debt, and so that's a
Mm-hmm.
big sort of platform that's helped Renee and I get here, even on those low salaries, just not starting with debt. So that's huge. Um, yeah, I'm also thinking about the discrepancy between either choosing to follow your passion and doing the work you want to do
Mm.
and thinking about money. Like I
Yeah.
was always told that you can either, the like if you do what you love, you will never work a day in your
Yeah.
life, right? Like, and if you do that, you will be poor.
Yeah.
But there's, I think, a way to make those two paths like talk to each other and actually do what you love, but also
Hmm.
be financially savvy and educated, and
Yeah.
take care of yourselves in the meantime as well.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I think, and I think even in this time we're in 2025, like the idea of what a stable job is totally different. Like
Hmm.
even just a few months ago, I was considering like starting to apply to jobs in the federal government because I was like, you know what, that wasn't necessarily like exactly where I saw my life going, but I feel like there are jobs that I could do,
Yeah.
enjoy my day to day, and that's an extremely stable career. As we know, the federal government is not a stable career right now.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I think you just, I don't know how to like end that statement, but I think
Yeah.
stability is a big part of what I think about.
Mm.
And so that might not necessarily come from just like one type of job. Like
Yeah.
if you were in school in the 2010s, everyone was telling you to get a computer science degree and work in tech.
Hmm.
And those salaries are still very high, but there's layoffs every 6 months.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, that's I think also why I think about money outside of just what my job title is.
Yeah, I mean, it feels subjective and contextual, this idea of stability. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for me, for example, I'm adjuncting as a professor at the Rhode Island School of Design and a couple other places as well at Brown at the Oxford School of Art. And I just had two of my courses canceled this
Mm-hmm.
summer. And so I'm losing that income, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like an unstable place, but at the same time, I don't know, there's all these other kinds of stability that's enabling, like
Yeah.
being able to be at home and have this like consistent schedule and routine and things like that. So yeah, just thinking about stability not in terms of income and stuff like that, but also how we feel
Mm-hmm.
where we live and things like that, which actually
Yeah.
brings me to home buying and like
Mm-hmm.
just this massive thing, and that I feel like most people have some kind of relationship to, either a rejection of it, an acceptance of it,
Mm-hmm.
or a different kind of relationship to it. Would you mind talking a little bit about how you've thought about it, if that's something that you want in your life,
Yeah.
things like that?
Yeah, it's definitely something that I want, that we talk about a lot. I lived in New York City for a while and looked at like what it would look like to buy a place there in the
Hmm.
future, and it doesn't really appeal to me, even though I loved living there and was seriously considering moving back there after graduation. And I think I just realized, like at this point in my life, I really want to set myself up to be able to buy a house
Hmm.
sometime either in the next few months or in the next couple years.
Hmm.
Um, and and yeah, I think it's something that in some ways I took for granted growing up, and like my parents always owned their home while I was alive in the world.
Right. Hmm.
And so it just felt like an automatic thing that will happen.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, there's a lot that goes into like preparing yourself for it. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So based on that sort of timeline, what kinds of challenges do you feel like you've already come across, or
Hmm.
how are you planning to get to those aspirations?
Yeah, I mean the first thing is sort of where I would buy a house.
Hmm.
Um, like I mentioned that I lived in New York and loved it, but I also it's extremely unaffordable
Yeah.
for many people. And I am a single individual who hopefully will adopt a kid in a
Mm.
few years. So I'm thinking about like I can't like it's not just about buying a one bedroom apartment. Like I
Hmm.
would want to have space
Yeah.
for me to have like an art studio and a room for the kid and all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about where, like, some places are not quite affordable for what I'm expecting my salary range to be. Um, but I also want to be in or near a city. So, like where I grew up in Virginia, that's also kind of unaffordable to me right
Mm-hmm.
now. Um, and I think that's something a lot of people are dealing with, like the places they grew up, even if their parents owned or and continue to own a place there, it's not quite affordable
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Um, so yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. Is like it has to be a place that checks certain boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm thinking about Philadelphia because I went to school near there. I know people. I know the city
Yeah.
somewhat. Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny too. We use this word unaffordable a lot,
yeah,
but I'm like offended by it almost because I'm like, is it unaffordable or is it? I don't even know what the word is. Like, there, I feel like we need another word for it that
yeah.
takes the onus away from us and puts it back
Hmm.
on the market for being so shitty.
Yeah, you're
Like,
right.
we're also talking in
Affordable
like,
was like the nice term I was using
yeah,
for as if it's on me. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But like, I don't even know what language we can replace it with. But it's, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that the reason so many of the previous generations, our parents, grandparents, etc., seem to have these houses is because those conditions were different
Yeah.
and more inviting and quote unquote affordable,
Hmm.
right? And that's just not the case now. Like, we're looking
Hmm.
at 7% interest rates for the last
Hmm.
3 years. We're looking at the median house price. I don't even know where it's at right now, but at least 400K for a single
Hmm.
family home, right? Like, how do you grapple with all of that? Do you just kind of look at it as, okay, those are just what the goalposts are, now we have to make it there? Are you thinking about like potentially even waiting for things to crash or move in a
Hmm.
direction where it's easier to enter? How do you, what's your perception of the market and how do you think about those things?
Yeah, I mean, there's like sort of two sides to me. There's the one side that can like criticize the US and the capitalist system we live
Yeah.
in and day out. And then there's the other side of me that just feels like I have to figure out how to like
Mm-hmm.
have the life that I want to have
Mm-hmm.
in terms of home ownership. And I like for that, it does just feel like, okay, this is the goalpost of um, like what I need to afford a place. There was another thing I was going to say about that that just left my mind,
Mm-hmm.
but I
You're
mean,
fine.
I think yeah, I'll come back to what I was going to say.
Yeah.
But I mean, how do you feel now that you've bought a place and are thinking about all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was in that same place of like, okay, yes, the the U.S. capitalist system sucks, but these are the goalposts, and how do we get there? And working backwards from that, right? Like, I think before buying this house, I imagined being in this house,
Hmm.
and then work backwards from there. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what needs to happen? What does a house like this cost? How much money do I need? What is the down payment? What is a down payment?
Hmm.
Because I'm immigrant too, and these all of these concepts are pretty new to me, and so I had to learn everything pretty much from scratch. But now that I'm here, it feels so lovely.
Yeah.
It feels so nice, and also, I mean, there's a difference in thinking about these things between whether you're someone who is thinking about the resale value of the house
Yeah.
or if you genuinely just want a home to
Yeah.
build and to like live in and to make home, and then it just, the prices and the tax just kind of feel less significant. They're obviously
Yeah.
very important, but yeah, I'm not worried about something like, let's not paint the walls this color because the
Hmm.
house value might go down and things like that. It's just a different mode of thinking and being. um, but yeah, I come from a similar place where my parents also owned their home growing up, and so that felt
Hmm.
very natural. It felt unnatural somewhat when I was renting and paying a
Hmm.
landlord. Um, and I wonder about the privilege of that conditioning
Hmm.
also, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was what I remembered as you were talking was like for me also part of the motivation for owning a home was just I've had some crappy experiences with landlords
Yeah.
and
Oh
like
my God.
certain roommates, like people I've been sort of forced to live with because I just didn't have another housing option. For me, it's the a sense of like independence and safety and like personal expression to be able to have a place that's my own. Like, yes, homeownership comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of other problems.
Mhm.
You know, if your AC is broken, you got to deal with it. You can't just like ask your landlord. But at the same
Our AC is
time,
literally
yeah.
broken right now. It's 95
Yeah.
degrees outside. But sorry, continue.
No, but yeah, but I just have had such shitty experiences with some landlords and with some roommates. And I'm not even against the roommate experience and I want to
Hmm.
actually live with people again. So it's not like an inherent issue with that. I just want to have the like personal safety of like having a place that is my own and I have some amount of power with that.
Hmm.
And I have a friend who like has this like sort of her like crank opinion is that, or she wouldn't call it that, but she's like home ownership makes people evil. And I think about that as like as I'm using the word power, it's like yes, there is a lot of
Mm,
like
hmm.
power you can wield as a homeowner,
Yeah.
and there's can be like the nasty side of that of like how I've dealt with landlords and like it
Hmm.
feels so like any sort of problem you have with a person doesn't feel good. It feels worse to me when it has to do with housing.
Mm,
That's just something that like I feel like paralyzing stress when I'm having a conflict with a landlord and with the roommate, and it has to do with the place
hmm.
that I live. And so that's also why home ownership is something I think about a lot because I just like that would just be a extreme relief in my
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been 3 weeks since I moved into this home with my spouse, and I definitely feel like I'm starting to turn to the dark
Evil.
side. Like, "Oh, don't come onto my yard." No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, yeah, I appreciate what you said about landlords. Very, very similar experience with just shitty landlord after shitty landlord. But I also feel like I one of the things that was a barrier for me to home ownership was feeling like it was possible, or not even feeling, believing that it was possible for
Yeah.
someone like me. And I think a large part of the motivation for me to buy a house also was to, first of all, prove that it's possible,
Mm-hmm.
and second of all, to like give to others what I didn't have, which was
Yeah.
an example of it being possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you've had that kind of barrier, or if you've looked to particular people, to particular
Mm-hmm.
examples, to feel like, oh my god, this is possible.
Yeah, I mean, you're one example. Like, I think you're my first friend in terms of like our general age group to
Hmm.
own a home. And another thing I think of is I remember this. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but from at some point maybe like middle school, this couple that was like family friends with my parents
Hmm.
who I remember them having a housewarming and they were like, we didn't think this was possible for us, but we saw you buy a house.
Oh
And
wow.
like I just think about that as I think that was like a moment where I realized it was something
Yeah.
that you can take for granted but really is like a really huge
Hmm.
I don't even want to use the word accomplishment because it just feels like everyone should have a
Yeah.
place. But it is something that not everyone is thinking about as like
Hmm.
in their future, in their near future.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like I want to get into the specifics of this too, because it's not everyone, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of people that, I mean, I know we just said it comes naturally to think this way because we grew up in households that were owned by
Mm-hmm.
our parents. But also, there's like a lot of white tech bros with generational wealth
Mm-hmm.
that it comes even easier to, right?
Mm-hmm.
To imagine this. And I wonder if we can talk a little bit about our specific positionalities and how that plays into having to do the labor of making it feel possible in the first place, of believing it's possible in the first place, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with like your idea of a family unit too. Like
Mm.
I mentioned briefly, like I'm right now single and I plan in the next few years to adopt a kid, partnered or unpartnered. Like that's what I want to do.
That was me just like selling. Just kidding.
um, and and I think I don't. I think it's subways like I had in my mind. It's like a thing you do. You get married and you have a kid and you have a house. But I don't think I ever like totally consciously had that idea of like that's what my future will be.
Mm.
But I mean, I think something I've talked about with friends. I know a lot of people in our generation talk about is like having a commune in the woods and
Mm.
having a commune and buying a house with friends.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's definitely a little more conversation now of like what a family unit looks like that's not just the
Mm-hmm.
traditional um, two parents, two straight parents,
Yeah.
and 2.5 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think even as I'm thinking about buying a house, I'm thinking about like what are ways I could still live with other people. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not that I lived in one house that was a sort of commune, and one of the roommates was the owner of the house. And in some ways, that was like seemed like a really good idea at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
because there just weren't some landlord issues that other communes were having. But in other ways, every issue that I had with this person was just amplified because she
Mm.
was like underneath it was
Right.
a threat to my housing situation.
Right. The power.
Yeah, the power. And
Yeah.
so I think about that moving forward. Like if I were to buy a house and live with other people, like what are the ways to do that in a way that like
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely
Mm-hmm.
would want some level of equity
Yeah.
in that. But what does equity even mean? It's this word we throw around. Like
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that would look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about the commune model that you're describing, and I'm thinking about queer ways of buying a house and going on
Mm-hmm.
this journey. And I do feel like with me and Renee, I mean, of course, I'm trans, we're queer, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not a nuclear straight family, but in many ways we mimic it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like my way of doing this has been to walk straight paths in queer ways, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like in terms of like literally I watched YouTube tech bros and like the people who
Yeah.
the straight families are going to get their financial advice to get mine,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but then also being like very aware of how it is that I move through them and why it is I move through them. So like saving, investing, stuff like that, like feels very like step one, step two, step three, like this is the
Mm-hmm.
prescribed straight way of doing it, and so I'm doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
But for queer ends, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still kind of figuring that out. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder about what it means to like co-opt strategies without
Yeah.
committing yourself to them,
Yeah.
without like becoming them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know one of the things we talked about when we first talked about like investing in like navigating like finances is just like if you buy a sort of a mutual fund or an ETF that is representing the general stock market, like
Mm-hmm.
you are buying stocks in Amazon. Like
Yeah.
that is what you're doing. You're investing in Amazon. And but I think there is this idea that I feel like I see tangentially online a bit and from people who navigate and exist in leftist spaces of I think people love to use the like there's no ethical consumption under capitalism and people take that
Mm.
in so many different ways. Some people take it as like, well, I'm going to shop at Shein because
Mm-hmm.
whatever, we're in capitalism, there's nothing I can do. And then some people
Right.
take it as like, I will not participate
Mm-hmm.
in the stock market. And I think it's something to navigate and we're thinking about of like, well, this country and this world is set up in a certain way. I don't we have privileges of like going to college and going to grad
Mm-hmm.
school like to intentionally choose poverty and uncertainty
Mm.
when we're able to not choose it. I don't
Mm.
believe in that for myself.
Mhm.
So there are ways to like follow the people who have done well in this country, the
Right.
tech bros, whatever, on YouTube, or the financial advice.
Mhm.
But what are the ways we're at least aiming to not reinforce things that we
Yeah.
don't agree with?
Yeah, and still like re-inject intentionality, right, and care and
Yeah.
softness and community and all of those things. But really, just I don't know. For me, it's been about dispelling this fear within what I consider my communities, our communities, of this goal that's not for us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or
Yeah.
that because there's like real joy in just
Mm-hmm.
having a home of your own.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of the kind of noise around it and the conditioning around it sometimes pushes me, at least, like I had to unlearn this for myself. Like it would push me away from it, that it was like
Mm-hmm.
somehow not a great political choice to like want to buy a
Yeah.
home in the first place, if that makes sense. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Hmm.
Good talk. Yeah, I think we should probably end soon, but
Okay.
do you have any final thoughts that you want to share with us?
Um, I think my final thought is I think there's a lot to think about your own autonomy and ownership of your finances and your life goals. I think there's this friction sometimes. It can be easy to get into like, oof, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound right winger because I don't mean it in the right wing way.
Say it in the
But I'm
right
gonna
wing
say it,
way.
and then it's just gonna be it's gonna be what it's gonna be.
This is gonna
With
be the thumbnail.
line.
It's gonna be an arrow at Kaylynn, and it just says Trumper.
Yeah. I think there's a sort of natural way I've found in myself and in other people who have like maybe more leftist views, or I won't even say leftist, of just like being marginalized in some way,
Mm-hmm.
to have this like victim view of
Mm.
like the conditions of the world are bad and I will never have
Mm.
XYZ good thing. And I think that is true in a lot of ways. The systems we live in are not set up for a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
to succeed in however you define succeeding.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, we do all have autonomy and we do all have some degree of ownership over our lives. Or I won't say all, but I
Mm.
think there are ways we can choose a path or choose a mindset that we don't have to choose.
Mm.
I'm saying this sounds right winger because
Mm.
it sounds like I'm saying like um, we can all
Just like
make
will
it. We
yourself out
can,
of
yeah, and
poverty. Yeah.
I'm not saying that because
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe the system allows that to happen. I think
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that I feel like, and maybe it's only a specific microcosm I live in of like people um, who do have access to like some amount of income,
Mm-hmm.
yes or no college degree, but I think there are people who really just don't see this as an option when I think there are ways for it to be an option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right winger.
Right winger, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's your fault.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kaylynn, for joining us. This is the first style of video that we're doing on the channel. If it takes off, then we will never do it again. So,
Yes. I actually will take over the channel. At that
yes.
point, I will take ownership of your house.
Yes. Comment down below if you would like Kaylynn to squat in the house we just bought.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Bye.